Part 1 Prompt. In some works of literature, childhood and adolescence are portrayed as times graced by innocence and a sense of wonder. In other works, they're depicted as times of tribulation and terror. Focusing on a single novel or play, explain how its representation of childhood or adolescence shapes the meaning of the work as a whole. The book I chose to review today is The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini, because I really think that it's central around the theme of childhood and how it influences an adult's life. In The Kite Runner, the main character, Amir, had a very troubled childhood. He grows up neglected by his father, Baba, and unintentionally becomes entwined into the rigid class structure of late 20th century Afghanistan. He also witnesses his Hazara friend, Hassan, being raped, and has to live with his guilty conscience from failing to help him when he most needed it. The following is a quotation that I consider to be important because it really summarizes the terrors and tribulations of Amir's childhood. I actually aspired to cowardice because the alternative, the real reason I was running, was that Asaf was right. Nothing was free in this world. Maybe Hassan was the price I had to pay, the lamb I had to slay, to win Baba. These were Amir's words after seeing Hassan being raped and choosing to flee instead of defend Hassan. We can clearly see that Amir has discovered something very key to his character, that he was worse than a coward, and actually was quite a cheap person, trading Hassan's life for a blue kite just to please Baba. We can see that he is disgusted with his actions, but somehow he does not seem to regret them. Later on, Amir continues to betray Hassan. For example, he pelts Hassan with pomegranates from the tree in which they had once carved their names, feeling guilty about his previous actions and hoping that Hassan would punish him. However, Hassan proves his unwavering love and loyalty and refuses to lift a hand. From this situation, we, as readers, can see that Amir has discovered what a weak, selfish person he is in comparison to Hassan, who displays extreme courage in the face of violence. This event causes further guilt to Amir. Thus, what Amir truly takes away from his childhood is 1. Cowardice, which he gains from leaving Hassan to be raped, 2. The feeling of not being poor socially and economically, like Hassan, and even at times looking down upon these people, 3. Immense guilt from betraying Hassan 3 times, once by being a bystander, another by pelting Hassan with pomegranates, and the last by framing Hassan for stealing a wallet and watch, just so Amir could personally be relieved from his guilt. These realizations stay with Amir his whole life, until he encounters the challenge of saving a deceased Hassan's son, Sarab, from Hassan's rapist. Amar realized that this is the chance to redeem himself for his previous actions that occurred during his adolescence. By risking his life against the murderous Asaf and showing his immense concern for Sarab when he attempted suicide, Amir proves that his childhood no longer defines him, that he is no longer a coward, he is no longer weak, and that Hassan will be able to continue to live on in his son Sarab. The following is an important quote that displays Amir's transition. My body was broken. Just how badly I wouldn't find out until later, but I felt healed. Healed at last. I laughed. This quote takes place during Amir's fight with Asaf and shows us that even though Amir is experiencing the most pain in his life, he feels relieved because he has finally become free of the chains of his childhood. Childhood is obviously a very important factor in this book. Amir led a life of terror, betrayal, and tribulation that gave him the character traits of selfishness, weakness, cowardice, and immense guilt. The character development that occurs in Amir's childhood provides a basis for him to change himself for the better, as he turns selfishness to selflessness, weakness to strength, cowardice to bravery, and guilt to redemption. Overall, representation of adolescence shapes the meaning of the work as a whole because the entirety of The Kite Runner revolves around the theme of redemption. Amir's main journey through this novel is to redeem himself for his cruel actions and thoughts against Hassan. In my literature classes in school, we were never forced to speak up and tell the class our opinions. Instead, it was on a volunteer basis, so often we would only hear a few points of views from a few people. Through this course, I had the responsibility to answer discussion questions, and often they made me really think over complex thoughts about what I was reading instead of just letting it flow in one ear and out the other. Also, it was really interesting for me to see what other people thought about the same question, and to see if I completely disagree with them or really related with them. Another aspect of this course was the fact that we did a lot of background research. When we were researching Jim Crow laws in Module 1, I realized just how much more easier it was for me to read and truly understand the struggles and oppression Grant and Jefferson went through. So, I would ultimately say that over the course of the semester, I've grown as a learner because I had the opportunity to realize just how much understanding the context of a novel and sharing your thoughts over the novel with other people will help you understand the author's purpose and the ultimate meaning you get out of it. The discussion that immediately comes to my mind is one of the first ones we did. It was entitled Cruel and Unusual Punishment. When I first saw this prompt, I was so excited to write about it, just because there were so many things happening in the world that related to it. I define cruel and unusual punishment as punishment too extreme for a crime committed, and sometimes even undeserved in the first place. It is punishment handed out not simply on the basis of a person's actions, but on the basis of their race, intelligence level, and socioeconomic status as well. I believe it was around this time that the infamy of Brock Turner was stirred up in the media, and I would read endless articles that highlighted the racial injustice in the judicial system. Turner was convicted guilty of raping a girl while unconscious, and there were even two eyewitnesses present to corroborate this. However, he was only sentenced to 6 months, which was later shortened to 3 because his judge had decided that the prison would have been too much of a negative impact upon his future. However, the judge recently convicted a Latino immigrant to 3 years for a similar crime. Here is the source. Just by delving deeper into this discussion, I realized that racial injustice is not only ingrained in certain duties of certain civil workers, but in society as a whole. We allow ourselves to live in a society where class, race, position, and heritage provide unspoken advantages to some, letting them escape the law or letting them take advantage of a law designed to accustom their status. On the opposite end, there are people who suffer from the tilted scale, as their class, race, position, and heritage provide great disadvantages in the legal system. Ultimately, cruel and unusual punishment is constituted by society's norms, and I believe this was a very important discussion to have, because when you truly consider the reality of this problem we have in the legal system, it is very eye-opening. The belief that informs this argument is that inequality is a very real thing, and it does indeed exist. However, why does it exist? I enjoy studying human actions, so I chose to take a psychoanalytical criticism viewpoint on this issue. I believe inequality exists because we have been conditioned or influenced very early on in our childhood and development that inequality is something that is unfortunately there, yet normal. And we, as a society, tend not to want to disturb the norm. Society does not change because we have this pre-established viewpoint that what is happening in the world is okay because we've grown up like this and it has always been there. I believe that those that disagree with me try to assume that society is not flawed. We, as humans, become generally uncomfortable when our flaws are made obvious and revealed to others. This most often happens because we are ashamed. Thus, instead of trying to blame society, those that disagree with me may try to blame the criminals, who we have inherently become conditioned to associate as untrustworthy, though this is not true for everyone. If we have something that is publicly flawed, it is easier to deflect blame onto that one thing instead of exposing your own weaknesses. Something that this course forced me to do was establish personal connections with what I was reading. For example, I connected with the Joy Club on a very deep level, because throughout the book I saw events that mirrored things that occurred in my own life and my mother's. Not only did this help the book become one of my favorites, but it also helped me understand that character's situations, as well as mine. Prior to reading the book, I always had doubts about who I truly was, American or Indian, and by reading the story where the author had the same experiences, I realized I was not alone. So, outside the classroom, I believe I will attempt to become more empathetic and connect with real people in real situations with whom I share similar experiences, because not only will I be able to understand them more, I will be able to understand my actions as well. Another thing this course made me do was look at certain situations from different viewpoints, such as with the cruel and unusual punishment discussion prompts. By listening to the opposing side, I was able to modify my argument to contain any convincing points they made, and I was able to understand the different personalities and attitudes of others. Thus, outside the classroom, I believe that this continued practice of maintaining and observing different points of view will help me understand people's actions and their thoughts more. This can be important in several aspects, whether it be debating in my hopeful future career as a lawyer or just discussing issues with my family.